college football edition for Saturday, November 16th. I'm Ian Cameron with Big Ragoo, DJ Big Boss, alongside as they are with me every single Saturday. No Drew Martin this week, though. He is away in Mexico, I understand. So we wish Drew well. He'll be back with us and hosting this show next Saturday. But we'll make do, the three of us on the show today. No problem. We'll run down the college football slate. Let's get everybody's opening thoughts on a Saturday morning, another big college football Saturday. The season's winding down, guys. We got 3 weeks of regular season college football left. And next thing you know, bowl season's going to be here. And it's unbelievable how quickly the season just flies by like this, but we're getting there. It seems like college football every year, it comes and goes, and it's done in a blur, and feels that way again this year. Big Ragoo, how are you this morning?
Doing fine, my man. How you doing this morning? How's the Great White North treating you today?
Good. It's a great football weekend here in the city of Hamilton. I mean, with Canadian college football, I know it's not American college football in terms of pomp and circumstance here, but we got the McMaster Marauders, the Hamilton University college football team, in the semifinals today against Calgary. I'm excited to see that. And, of course, tomorrow, CFL East Division Final, Hamilton Tiger Cats against the Edmonton Eskimos. Chance for college and pro football championships in Canada for the city of Hamilton. We've got a chance at maybe getting the clean sweep, but still a lot of work to be done. DJ Big Boss out in Cali. Cali, how are you, my friend?
What up, Babano? Big Ragoo 62. How y'all feeling today? It's a wonderful Saturday, but gonna tone it down a notch this week in college football because got some nice situations out there, and I'm just gonna do what I know right now. I can't do anything outside of what I know. If I hadn't seen those two teams play for at least a whole game, then I'm not touching nowhere near it this week. But I gotta do my normal every Saturday start off. I know Drew Martin's not here, but I'm gonna go ahead and bust my little rhyme. Babano, do you mind if I bust a rhyme?
Well, no, I want you to bust a rhyme every week. I expect it now. Go. Mike is yours.
Okay, here we go. I'm gonna go old school from the parts of the place where Big Ragoo's from. So I took a test to become the MC, and all the people was amazed at me. So they put me on the show, the closing line with Big Ragoo and Bobano. Now it was something like that. I kind of messed it up, but it's all good.
Who you emulating there, my man? Back east.
No, that's that Big East Run DMC.
All right,
how we do it.
I was actually at a bar watching some local Hamilton hip hop artists last night. So it's hard work to be a rapper. It really is. Like, some of them are getting out of breath at the end of it, so you could tell. But they're working on their craft. They're trying to expand their ability, their talent level, but they were good. I was impressed by them last night.
I'm not very good, but I've seen a lot of people rap.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, exactly. All right, guys, we're going to start with big games. We always do when Drew's hosting. We start with the big games. I've selected 3 of the big games to isolate today. We're going to talk Minnesota, Iowa for sure. We're going to talk about Oklahoma and Baylor. And, of course, Georgia and Auburn. Those look to be the 3 biggest games on the college football slate today. So we'll start with Minnesota and Iowa. Who would have thought November 16th, or before the season, I should say, Minnesota-Iowa is on November 16th is going to be one of your biggest games in college football. But that's what we've got. The undefeated Gophers taking on the Iowa Hawkeyes. We've got Iowa laying 3 in this game. The total 44.5 across the board in this one. And when I break this game down, I honestly don't see a case to be made for Iowa other than the Minnesota letdown factor, because I think Minnesota's the better football team. I like the way they moved the football at will last week against that Penn State defense. Penn State had a pretty solid defense most of the season. Minnesota did whatever they wanted. They ran the football. Tanner Morgan was effective. Didn't make mistakes throwing the football when he was asked to, and Penn State's defense really didn't have any answers for what Minnesota was doing. And on the flip side, Minnesota's defense did a good job confusing Sean Clifford, the quarterback, into some mistakes, and really held the run game in check. And they were just a better team on that side of the ball as well. Full marks for Minnesota, and certainly the letdown's a possibility. Maybe they're flat, but I don't see how you're undefeated. You're coming off a win. And you've got these big goals that are still ahead of you, how you could be flat. And when I look at these teams, when I look at Iowa, if you're going to beat Iowa, and especially if you're going to beat Iowa at Kinnick Stadium in Iowa City, You got to be a physical football team. You've got to be willing to man up with them in the trenches and really go after them physically. I think Minnesota's proven they're the kind of team that can handle that and handle Iowa's physicality in the trenches. So I think this is a pretty solid matchup for Minnesota. I know Iowa's faced the overall tougher schedule. People will point to that as well for making a case for Iowa. Iowa had to play Michigan. Iowa had to play Wisconsin. Iowa had to play Penn State. Well, if you look at a common opponent, Penn State, Iowa lost to Penn State at home. Didn't play well in that football game against the Nittany Lions. Their offense and Nathan Stanley got shut down in that game. And then you look at Minnesota when they played Penn State last week. They had their way in the trenches. They bullied Penn State offensively and defensively. So, yeah, I mean, could I fall victim to, Minnesota let down, Minnesota just sloppy, not focused, don't have their heads on straight after one of the biggest wins they've had in decades last week, potentially. But I'm going to take my chances here with the Gophers, and I'm going to row that boat, baby, with PJ Fleck one more time today. I was on Minnesota last week. I'm going to be on them again today at +3. Big Ragoo, what's your take on this Big Ten matchup, Minnesota-Iowa?
Yeah, I was on the wrong side of the boat last week with going against Minnesota. I was on Penn State, so shame on me for that one. But at the same time, there's in this particular game, the way it sets up, like you say, going into Iowa, that's really a tough place to play, especially at night. But being it's an afternoon game, it has a different feel to it. Minnesota, they're doing all the right things. PJ Fleck has got these boys playing solid football. And, I question the number 2 here. I don't think it's going to be a matter of trying to keep Minnesota focused because obviously they're doing a lot of the right things. And I think PJ Fleck's that type of coach to kind of keep these guys in check, not to get ahead of themselves here. So, like you said, the schedule was always a big question for me in the Big Ten with all these tough defenses, the way they line and play football up in that conference. Points come at a premium up there, and some of the teams early in the season that were, these big favorites like Wisconsin take a big fall, Penn State took a big fall, and quietly Minnesota's been getting it done, and there's an arguable probably one of the better teams. The record definitely reflects where they're at in the standings and in the polls right now. So this is probably going to be the go-to game for them, even so they got past the tough ones. I don't know. I'm going to take a pass on this one. I do like Minnesota the way they're playing football, but I'm going to be sitting on the sidelines here. And hopefully, for Minnesota's sake, they get the W to move on in the rankings and maybe get a big Big Ten matchup with Ohio State eventually. But it's a no play for me, but I'm going to be sitting on side. Maybe a total look for me. Maybe look towards the under here possibly. That would be my look on this game.
Yeah, I know Penn State, Minnesota flew over the total last week, but don't forget Penn State plays a little above average tempo and pace on their offense. You're not going to get pace from Iowa. Right. You're going to get one of the slowest paces in college football. Minnesota doesn't necessarily play fast, so it's probably a better under situation this game than it was maybe last week when that game just had points galore, especially early in it last week in that one. And by the way, Big Ragoo throughout the term, I'm sitting on the sidelines for this one. That's something we all as bettors need to use in our vocabulary at this time of year. I know we're tempted to just hammer the board. We've got NFL, college football, NBA, college basketball, NHL, everything's going on right now. Sometimes saying I'm going to sit on the sidelines for this one might be the best decision you make. DJ Big Boss, next to you, Minnesota, Iowa.
Well, I'm on this game right here, and it's a lesson that I learned this week, yesterday with the San Diego State game. And when it comes down to this part of the season, like I said earlier, it's all about watching the teams and, keeping a good eye on what you're betting here. So with these two teams right here, I seen Iowa back against Iowa State. I seen the offense that was like a dry sandwich or something, And I seen Minnesota just recently right here. And I see the team with a lot of leadership. I seen the team with a lot of ability. I see a team that's trying to make their mark in the sand right here. So I had to jump on Minnesota plus the points in this game right here. I really like Minnesota, the way they performed last week. Now, I could be wrong. They could come out and be nothing like they was last week, but I don't see Iowa as a great opponent. Stepping up in that Penn State game meant a lot to me with that Minnesota team. So I'm taking Minnesota +3.
All right. In agreement with me there on that one. DJ Big Boss with Minnesota +3. And PJ Fleck's no stranger to leading his team through an undefeated regular season. Like, he's got experience doing that. He added, of course, Western Michigan in the MAC years ago. They had an undefeated regular season. So, talk about the ability for a coach to keep his players level-headed, even keel, on to the next one mentality. He obviously showed that at Western Michigan, and that's another thing that I kept in the back of my mind. Like, I know it was a huge win last week. You figured naturally you're not going to bring that same intensity this week, but PJ Fleck's got that knack from a coaching standpoint. Keep the players focused, even after big wins, even keel, steady on the rudder, next game up, that kind of mentality. So Minnesota for both DJ Big Boss and I in this one. SEC matchup coming up, 3:30, your typical CBS SEC game of the week start time. The Georgia Bulldogs taking on the Auburn Tigers. We've got Georgia laying 3 here at Jordan-Hare Stadium in Auburn. The total has come down a bit, 45-43 in this one. And there's definitely a sentiment out there in the betting markets that Georgia's sort of underperformed this season, and you could definitely argue that. Their loss to South Carolina, to be honest, it looks even worse now when you're seeing South Carolina really fall apart, really ravaged by injuries, with Todd Muschamp needing, Will Muschamp, I should say, needing a vote of confidence really from his AD yesterday, saying, "Oh, we like the coach here. He's not going anywhere." So that's the one loss Georgia had. It sticks out like a sore thumb seeing how the Gamecocks season has sort of gone off the cliff a little bit in recent weeks. And Jake Fromm and the offense hasn't looked quite as explosive or potent as we thought they would be. Even the defense at times has been gashed. Now the question is, can Bo Nix in this Auburn offense? We know it's been a struggle. It's been a grind for Bo Nix, especially against better competition. He struggled against Oregon. He struggled against LSU. He struggled against Florida to move the ball. There's been a lot of games this year where Bo Nix hasn't stepped up to the plate. Most of those were on the road or on neutral fields, so at least he gets this game at home. But his ability to navigate through a quality defense and a quality opponent is still debatable. In my mind in this one. It's a tricky game. I think the number's right where it should be. This is my big Ragoo. I'm staying on the sidelines game here with Georgia and Auburn. I kind of agree with the under move in this game, 45 down to 43. It's probably going to be a lower scoring game. Georgia, I don't expect their – and Georgia, by the way, it's worth noting, I think they're going to have some of these guys back for this game today, but they had cluster injuries on the offensive line when I looked at the injury report earlier in the week for Georgia. You don't want injuries on the offensive line against one of the best defensive fronts and defensive lines in college football, of course, that being the Auburn Tigers. So that Georgia offensive line could be a point of concern, especially if they've got some injuries at that unit going into this game today. So that's I think a couple of them one of them might be back for sure. The other one's questionable. One tackle, one guard on that O-line. That's a concern when you're going up against that kind of defensive front. Now you got to do it on the road too in Auburn. So it's a really tough game for me from a side perspective. I would lean under, but I'm not going to have any betting involvement personally on this game. How about you, DJ Big Boss? Georgia and Auburn, are you getting involved?
We talked about this on the Boss and the Sauce a little bit. Me and Big Ragoo kind of like the Auburn earlier in the week. I don't know where he is with it, but as I went in for the numbers and took a look at this game, I found myself looking at the total a little bit more. And I'm right here, I think I might see a kind of jaded line right here with the total, because on paper it really looks like a mean under with Georgia's defense top ranked, and also Auburn's defense being top ranked. And we've seen Auburn's defense really depend on the defense to win some games and stuff. So we know they both got defense. Just sounds like an under game all the way. But what I noticed was both teams are very balanced on offense, 200 yards plus in the air. So I see right here two teams that's gonna two very similar. And I do this all the time. Two teams that are very similar. When you put them together, you kind of get an opposite out of the two. So where we think we gonna have these two defensive teams take their time and go up and down the field, the run game is not gonna be there. They already know that. They already know these guys could stop them on the run because they have very good run defense. So they got to go straight to the pass, and they pass pretty well as well. So I think that we get over that total, even though it's drilling down. I think it's a good spot to go over in that total. Kind of contrarian, but I like it.
Yeah, I mean, if they can't run the football, Auburn can't run, and Swift and the Georgia team can't run the football either. And you're going to get more pass plays. More pass plays means more clock stoppages. More clock stoppages means more plays. More plays means more chances for points. And domino effect, as I'm saying it out loud. Yeah, and it could lead to definitely maybe a bit more points. And again, 43 means you don't need a shootout. 24-20 cashes a ticket. That gets you a winner with this total where it is right now, if you like the over. Big Ragoo, what's your thoughts? Georgia, Auburn.
Trench game, definitely. NFL style field game, short number, two spectacular defenses. The only angle I come up with on this game, being that Georgia, that now they're in the spotlight, with the Alabama, they could write their own ticket to get to the national championship playoffs. And this is an important game for them, obviously. And like you were saying, a little banged up at the O-line, and it shows some inconsistencies with Fromm, because hasn't been a banner year for him throwing the football down the field. And I think that, like you said, the key matchup in this game for me is going to be the O-line on Georgia side versus that front seven on Auburn. But talking about Bo Nix now, Bo Nix, he's faced some tough opponents, in the big games. One, he came away with the win. The other two, LSU and Florida, not so much. Both of those games on the road, by the way. And this game here is played at Jordan-Hare, so it might be a little different feel for him playing at home. And I think he's grown up a little bit. He is a freshman. I think this is the ideal spot for him to grow up on national TV to get a big win. I'm going to lean Auburn at home on the money line, because I think if this is a spot for them to get a win, a tough win, and grind the game out, this is it for me. So I'm going to put my money on on Auburn at home on the money line. I like that spot here for Auburn to get the job done. Not going to be an easy game for them by no. I just think they're going to come out on the better side versus the run with that front seven. DeAndre Swift, a nice running back. But how healthy is that O-line, like you were saying? So that was my concern. I think that's the underlying factor in the game is Auburn's defense slowing them down, and then maybe getting an interception or fumble recovery here or there, a specialty. As long as Bo Nix doesn't turn the ball over. So I'm not going to say he's got to be a game manager here. He's just going to have to do enough of the right things and let the plays happen in front of him. And I think they can come away with a win here at home.
Yeah, exactly. Play clean football is the message from Gus Malzahn today to his quarterback, Bo Nix. Play clean football. You don't necessarily have to go out there and win the game. Don't lose the game for us. That's what's important. In a game like this, where it's probably going to be close, it's probably going to be a battle, probably going to be down to the wire. And maybe we get another thrilling finish like we had a few years ago with Georgia at Auburn, the immaculate deflection game. Remember that? Ball was tipped by the defender in the air, gets behind him, right into the receiver's hands, gone. And that's the game-winning touchdown for Auburn. That was one of the great Auburn-Georgia games we've seen the last 5-6 years. Maybe we'll get another good one today between these two rivals. Next up, we've got a big, and it really is a big, they put the big and Big 12 matchup here, Oklahoma against Baylor. Oklahoma 10.5-point road favorites in Waco. Remember, this game's in Waco, Texas, and here's Oklahoma laying 10.5 in this game on the road. The total has gone up from 67 to 69, 69.5 in most places. And hey, if this is a trap and there's been a block of cheese placed, I guess I'm the most going after that cheese for this game, because I am on the Baylor side here, plus 10.5 in this game. I'm looking at this as a situation where, for me, this is about a fate of Oklahoma's defense that we've seen the last 2 weeks, which has reverted back into last year's group, where they can't tackle anybody in the open field, where they're blowing coverages in the secondary, where they're getting just absolutely manhandled their defensive front in the trenches. That's a Kansas State team that's a physical football team that did it to Oklahoma. That's an Iowa State team that was physical with Oklahoma and gave them fits defensively. And that's a Baylor team with the same damn MO that Kansas State and Iowa State have. Physical type of team under Matt Rule. I mean, Matt Rule's coached physical teams going back to Temple that are tough in the trenches. And I think that it bothers Oklahoma, because it certainly bothered them the last 2 weeks, where Kansas State and Iowa State moving up and down the field against that defense. The question is, can Baylor's defense hold Jalen Hurts and that Sooners offense under wraps for a little bit and at least allow their offense to hang around in this game, because I don't think they're shutting down Oklahoma completely, and I actually like the over in this game as well. It's sort of like an insurance policy. I'm taking out an insurance policy because I think if Oklahoma covers this game, it's going over the total. So, and I'm somewhat concerned still that Baylor may not be able to handle the speed of Jalen Hurts in this Oklahoma offense. But I don't think Oklahoma's defense is stopping Charlie Brewer. I don't think their defensive line's going to be able to hold up against a Baylor offensive front that has shown capabilities of winning a war and being out physical an opponent in the trenches. And like I've said with Oklahoma, we've seen it 2 weeks in a row where they've been bullied, flat out bullied their defense in the trenches. So I like Baylor a little bit more than the over, but in case Oklahoma sort of this game gets away from them, I'm also going to go with over 68 in this game, although it's going up as we speak. Like I said, 69 and a half. So if you like the over, don't hesitate to bet it, because it looks like this total is on the move right now. I just think it's asking a bit much for Oklahoma to be laying 10 and a half on the road here. I mean, last time they were on the road was that Kansas State game. They were bullied completely in that game. They were awful for most of that game. They made it close in the fourth quarter, but I think Kansas State sort of took their foot off the gas and let them back in. And then last week, I mean, Oklahoma didn't show the defense. You trust them to maintain a big margin. Iowa State was let right back into that football game by this Oklahoma defense, which early in the season played well, hasn't looked that way the last 2 weeks. So for me, it's Baylor plus the points, and it's also over the total in this Big 12 matchup. Big Ragoo, let's go to you with your thoughts. Oklahoma Baylor down there in Waco, Texas.
Yeah, this game, it's funny because I was hoping we'd talk. I knew we were going to talk about this game, but it just lines up with what I one of my big caps as an old school cap for me here. When you get last week, if you were involved in that TCU Baylor game, which I had Baylor minus the 2.5 in that game. Lucky to get the win. They needed to kick a 50-plus yard field goal to tie it up at 9-9 to go to overtime, and then it went to triple overtime. So it was a pretty emotional game for Baylor. Big win for them to keep their undefeated record intact. And this game could be a Big Ten, a top 10 matchup. Even though it's 10 versus 12, however they work the numbers out. Regardless, they both. Baylor played a heck of a game and left it all out there to get that W last week. A very emotional game for them. Then they do have the confines of playing at home against Oklahoma, which you did say, they played some two really tough defensive games that kind of didn't go their way. And that was my point initially, was Oklahoma's defense has played better, but not of late. So I just think in this particular spot here, it kind of leaves the door open for Oklahoma too, with Alabama taking that loss, mentioning them to possibly get back in that college football playoff. So this is a motivation 101 for me in this particular spot here. Even though they have been up against it on the defensive side, they do show signs of possibly keeping the defense intact. Maybe we'll see how that works out on the field. But the over, like you were saying, if you like the over, that kind of the insurance policy, I would say over with the numbers going up. I think the side's going to be on the Oklahoma with the offense. I just think they got too much firepower to hold, even though Brewer and Rule have done a nice work in Waco to maintain that undefeated schedule. I think this is a game that they're going to fall apart here. I just like Oklahoma to kind of get the job done. And offensively speaking, I don't think they can keep up with them. I really don't. Even though Baylor, and it surprised me, Baylor's defense has been pretty good. I think they've been averaging right around 19 points a game, which is a good look in the Big 12. Not too many teams do that, and TCU was the other one, but Oklahoma, I think, on the road, it's going to be a road test for them. But I just think, like I say, motivation 101, the national spotlight, the possibility of them getting into a playoff picture again. I think they're going to kick the door open and run right through it. I like Oklahoma. That's going to be my best play today, too, by the way. I'm going to go ahead and let that out of the bag now. So I like Oklahoma laying the 10 points.
All right, Oklahoma laying the 10, and it actually went up from 8.5 to 10, and now 10.5. So there has been a steady trickle of Oklahoma money all week long in this game. And you're right, Baylor has shown some warts. I mean, but you look at it, it didn't look great against against West Virginia recently. TCU game, Texas Tech game. They had to come back from the death really to beat Texas Tech. I remember in that crazy game weeks ago. So it's not been smooth sailing for Baylor. They've had some close calls. They've had some escape with this by the skin of their teeth results. In recent games, so that is a concern.
I just think this is the game that happens for them, the floodgates to open up for Baylor. Just especially coming after that triple overtime win last week in Texas, Oklahoma waiting to get back in the national spotlight with Alabama losing. I just think it's a motivation game for them, and they're going to show their wares on the field today.
Exactly, and we'll see if they can certainly play better than the last time Oklahoma was on the road, which didn't end well in the Little Apple of Manhattan, Kansas in that one. DJ Big Boss, what do you think here? Oklahoma, Baylor, definitely cases to be made for both sides.
I'm absolutely all the way off this game right here. It's two ways to play this game. This is a situational spot right here. Now, if you see Baylor as a Cinderella team that's going to be somewhere that they not supposed to be, then you definitely want to take Baylor plus those points. But if you see Oklahoma as a team that still got a chance to get in this college playoffs, and they not only do they have to win, but they have to win impressively to prove that, because they already got a loss. Now, if you believe in that side, then you're going to definitely jump in Oklahoma. So that I just see it two ways right here. I like, I love teams that play hard and play from the heart. I don't think Baylor talent level is as good as Oklahoma, but I think they play way more jailed and stuff like that. But on the Oklahoma side, here we got a team that took an early loss that they could be really upset by. If they really gelling at this point, then they saying, hey, man, let's go out here and kick some ass and take some names and try to make our presence in this stretch, for the bowl games and for the playoffs. So if I had to take it, I'd probably jump on the Oklahoma side, but people say sharp, but if you want to take one of those other angles, then you probably take Baylor plus the points in a big game. Big games usually, come down to short numbers. So 10 is a lot to be given up if they really take this as a serious big game and they come to play today. But they could be, Baylor could be on their last breath. They had some tough games. I think they had an overtime game recently, but they had some tough games. This might be the end of the road for them. But if it's that, and I'm a Notre Dame fan, I've seen Cinderella seasons a couple of times now. If it's that true Cinderella season, then they find a way to make it happen in that game.
Yeah, exactly. Notre Dame certainly has had those instances in years past, no question about that. All right, so there's our three big games we broke down. So now we open it up to everybody, what they like the most on the card. I'll throw out a couple that are starting at noon because I want to get those quickly out there so that you guys have at least a half an hour to get some of these bets in. I'm on the Indiana Hoosiers, plus 15 or so at Penn State. You look at these off a loss in a big game spots, teams that are off a loss in a big game, letdown factor, bubble burst. This is where the letdown means a little more, when you're off a loss in a big game as opposed to when you're off a win in a big game. You look at SMU, perfect example. They lost to Memphis, first loss of the year, and then against East Carolina the next week, they barely survived that game, barely won it. Notre Dame, after they got crushed by Michigan, life and death to beat Virginia Tech at home as 17.5-point home favorites. Those are just two examples off a loss in a big game where teams have just floundered next time out. And James Franklin's known for this at Penn State since he's been there. When they lose a big game, they're a little flat the next time out. And in fact, I think Indiana capitalized on one of these spots against Penn State last year. Penn State was off a big loss, played Indiana. Penn State won that game by 5 points in spite of the fact that the Hoosiers outgained the Nittany Lions 554 to 417 last year in that game, and Penn State barely survived, winning it by 5. I don't trust them in this spot. And don't look now, Indiana, even with the backup quarterback in there, Peyton Ramsey, of course, Penix Jr., Michael Penix is injured, out for the season, but he's played well. He played well against Penn State. He was the starter in that game where Indiana lost by 5 to Penn State last year. He played well in that game. He's capable of playing well, I think, here. And Indiana's been one of the best point spread teams in the Big Ten this season. You look at them; they're just quietly covering numbers left and right, especially as underdogs. I don't trust Penn State to win this game by anything close to this margin. I see, 3, 7, 10-point game at the most. I think Indiana covers wire to wire, getting more than 2 touchdowns here against a vulnerable Penn State team. What are you guys looking at in terms of the noon games? We'll start with you, Big Ragoo. Any early kickoff games that you're interested in?
Yeah, I talked about this game all week, and I almost made it my play of the week. But it's a Temple and Tulane game. Temple early in the year, their defense has been pretty solid, but has been suspect of late. Tulane, everybody loved Tulane as all the sharps, the smart bettors, smart money all season's been back in Tulane here. Now the number that would go to prove because Tulane went from like 3 points up to 6, I believe, is where the number sits in this game. But both teams have been pretty good defensively. When Temple decides to play defense, they probably have some of the best linebacking cores in the nation, and they've been yielding about 25 points a game. And the same thing with Tulane. Tulane it runs the hurry up style offense. Willie Fritz, he runs that style, and they're a little dinged up in the running back. So I talked about this yesterday. They're not that they're going to be out, but they're questionable. So they are dinged up there. So that might put a little bit more pressure on the quarterback to stretch that defense out a little bit. And they're yielding 25 points a game also. So with the sharp side being on Tulane and the slight tick down in the total from 55.5 to 54.5, I like the under here. I'm leaning towards the under, even though it's up tempo style play from Tulane. I think they have enough defense on the Temple side to kind of slow them down a little bit. Make kind of keep the plays too far down the field. Maybe they try to run the ball first, but if they do, that forces them to pass. And if that's not successful, then looking at a dead under here. So under 54.5 is my play. Tulane Temple.
Yeah, I mean that the only concern for me would be the pace of Tulane, and they've increased their pace and plays per game as much as any team in the country. Remember, they were snail pace, triple option for years under Willie Fritz. They've gone to more of a spread attack. Run is still run based, run heavy, but definitely at a much faster pace. But Temple's been good against the run. You saw last week against South Florida. They didn't get that run game going at all against Temple in that Thursday night game last week. Temple shut that run game down. And I know Justin McMillan has made improvements at the quarterback spot for Tulane, but he's still not a guy that can carry a team through the air. He's got to have a capable ground game. And as we mentioned, dealing with some banged up injuries at the running back position could be a factor in that one. So Big Ragoo liking the under with Temple and Tulane. DJ Big Boss, any noon Eastern early kickoffs that you're betting?
I'm taking a small step into this Michigan State game right here, and this is opposite of what I think in the Georgia and Auburn game. This is two under teams that I'm gonna go ahead and take under. The numbers are already low. These two teams struggle on offense. They win games by playing good defense. This is a grudge match right here, in-state rivals and stuff like that. So I think they take their time to get out on the field, and this one stays under the total.
I wouldn't argue with any Michigan State game under the total right now, not with that offense. That's an absolute abysmal abomination of an offense, putrid, whatever word you want to use right now. Brian Lewerke changed that game last week for the other team, not for his team, with a brutal, inexcusable interception late in the second half there, which really fueled that Illinois comeback last week. And to be honest with you, I can't touch Michigan State. Usually I'm always on Michigan State getting this kind of points in the rivalry game against Michigan. I have soured that much on their offense and D'Antonio, and I'm worried that they've sort of tapped out on the season. Maybe they rally back, by the way, because it's Michigan. It's a rivalry. You get up again for this game because of who you're playing, but I didn't see a lot of care or give a damn by the end of that football game last week and that brutal loss to Illinois from this Michigan State team. So I can't trust them. I know it's a lot of points in a rivalry game, but I flat out cannot trust this team, their mental psyche right now, their mindset, and certainly can't trust their offense against a Michigan defense that's played a lot better in recent weeks. And they're starting to put things together. Patterson's played better. I would actually lay the points if I had to in that game, but I'm staying off that Sparty Wolverines matchup. All right. We'll open it up now to the rest of the card in terms of other bets you're looking at outside of your best bet. We save those for the end of the show, and as well as your money line underdogs. I'll throw out some that I'm looking at today as we move on down the card. I really like Louisville laying the 3.5 against NC State. This looks like a dead NC State team that's not playing well at all. Their quarterback issues. Matt McKay couldn't play effectively. Bailey Hawkman, they tried him. He couldn't play effectively. Devin Leary, I'm not necessarily sold on him now that they're down to him. Now, I know Louisville's got quarterback concerns and injuries of their own. Juwan Pass got injured several weeks ago, out for the season. Now, he's now being called Mikhail. I don't understand this. We always called him Malik Cunningham. He's Mikhail Cunningham now, apparently, for the Louisville Cardinals. And he is questionable to play, so they could be down to their third quarterback. But we could be dealing with third quarterback versus third quarterback for these two teams here today. But the Louisville third quarterback had some decent numbers in limited action. I can't say the same about the NC State quarterback, so I think it's a little edge to Louisville. Louisville's defense is a bit of a concern, but they've played some really tough teams, some better offenses, way better offenses than this one. And the way NC State's been non-competitive, 3 losses in a row by 3 touchdowns or more, completely blown out, non-competitive. Louisville, by the way, can get bowl eligibility, I believe, with a win today, and that's big. So there's big time incentive for Scott Satterfield's team to go out there with a nice performance tonight in Raleigh, North Carolina. I like Louisville. They're a cheap number, laying 3.5 against a NC State team that's completely hit the wall in recent weeks. Another game I am looking at it's an early game actually. As Kansas, Oklahoma State, this total's going up, and I agree. I like the over 68.5, 69 now. Kansas, since the OC got fired and they replaced him with Brent Dearman, they've gone a lot more up tempo, and their offense has been pretty good. The first 2 games, it was excellent against Texas and Texas Tech. They rolled up over 30, 40 points in both games. They got shut down by Kansas State after that. But now they're off a bye, a chance to get that offense going, and Oklahoma State's defense is not really all that good, but Kansas defense is not really all that good either. They continue to give up points every single week. I think Spencer Sanders and my fellow Canadian, by the way, this guy's a great running back. He plays for Oklahoma State, and he's Canadian. He's from Edmonton, Alberta. Chuba Hubbard. This guy's been absolutely phenomenal for Oklahoma State. Great running back, and Kansas has a absolutely porous run defense. They cannot stop the run, and that's good against the Mike Gundy system. He likes to throw the ball, but he really likes to run it a lot too, and he's got the running back to do it. He should just run amok over this Kansas team defensively. So that, as both teams will play fast, should be big plays on both sides. I like that game over the total a lot, Kansas and Oklahoma State. And one more, and then I'll pass the mic to my comrades here. One more that I'm looking at in the today is, I got to do it. I got to do it. And it's not just I'm not just going to throw out the same old boring, dull, drabby Tom Herman as an underdog spiel, because we all know about that. But Texas +7, they're getting healthier. Don't be fooled by the score against Kansas State last week. They dominated the game. If not for a Kansas State kick return touchdown, Texas was winning that game going away. They're getting healthier at the right time of the year. They had a lot of injuries on defense. They're getting those guys back. They had some injuries on the O-line. They've gotten a lot of those guys back. The running back position's getting healthier. Texas looks like a team that, as we go on to the mid to late November, could be getting hot. Remember, this is what Texas did last year. Started playing their best football late in the season. I think that could happen here. And I don't trust Iowa State's mentality. They left it all out on the field against Oklahoma, only to fall agonizingly short by a point. Remember, they went for 2 to try to win that game in Norman last week. Didn't get it. They lost that game by 1. Now they got to turn around off a physically and mentally exhausting game like that and lay 7 points against a Texas team that's getting healthier. It's playing a little bit better. Oh, and you got a coach that all he does is cash tickets left and right in the underdog rule. So I like Texas there getting a touchdown against Iowa State. All right, that's some of mine. Big Ragoo, throw out some bets for us on the Saturday college football card.
I'm going to go to South Bend. My boys, Notre Dame squad up there, taking on the Naval Academy, right? What do you think about that? I'm going to throw one at you. I'm going to jump in the smoke, like my man likes to say here. Now, we know Notre Dame has had success against this team, but not very good at covering the number, right? I think the last few, actually more than a few, Navy's covered that number here. But Notre Dame, on paper, if you look at both of these teams, they're pretty evenly matched as far as the numbers go. But I don't know. I just think that the difference in this game is going to be the secondary Navy not being able to slow Book down. I think Book could keep some plays going with his legs. I'm not thrilled about the 7. I know the numbers come down to 7, so that's what put me on the game. I'm willing to lay a touchdown with Notre Dame at home against Navy, even though on paper the game should favor Navy. Just something tells me that Notre Dame's going to come away with this. They just had 2. I think their run defense is a little bit better here. I know they stopped Alabama early in the year. Held some. Georgia, they held some shorter numbers there. They held a pretty good Duke team on the run to shorter numbers here. So, and I think they could run the ball a little bit better than Notre Dame can. So I'm going to be on Navy there. Another one I'm looking at is the South Carolina Texas A&M game. Like you said, they got the vote of confidence for Muschamp. The AD did, but They have 4 wide receivers that are banged up here. I don't think they're going to have enough offense to go with College Station. And even though it's a big number, 11 for A&M here, I think they're in a bad rut right now. South Carolina is, and this season is going to be a write-off for them. It's a 4-6 team here. They lose this game, they're looking at 4-7. They get a bye week, then they get Clemson 4-8, and they missed the bowl this year. So South Carolina is not going bowling. They're not going nowhere fast. So I'm going to be on A&M minus the 11 points. A big number at home, but Jimbo Fisher, this is going to be a big game for him because he's got a chance to finish out the season strong and possibly look at a late, maybe not a New Year's Six bowl, but pretty close to it. So I like A&M laying the 11 points at home.
All right, and you know what? That's the only thing that kept me off A&M was they've been dreadful covering these kind of numbers this year. Hell, they didn't even cover a number like this against Arkansas. I remember many weeks ago, a really bad Arkansas. But there's nothing to like about South Carolina. I mean, that's a team that's just spiraling downward. So I'm in the camp where I was giving A&M some really serious consideration this week, but I ultimately passed. But I think you might have the right side there in that one. I just can't make a case for South Carolina right now. It's just a question of, can Texas A&M finally cover a number against a team that they should be able to outman? DJ Big Boss, what do you got rolling on this Saturday card?
I'm going right back to the well with a team everybody knows that I've been going to the well with. That's Colorado State, getting 10 points with this Air Force team. Now, if I'm back to the realization of I've watched both these teams this season, and looking at the two teams, Air Force I feel is overrated, and I think they still overrated. And I think that this Colorado State team gets a grip of this team. Not to say that they will win outright, but which they can. But I think Colorado State in this one, plus the points, is just 10 points is way too much. This should have been somewhere around 7, maybe leaning 8 and let it climb up. But for them to put it at 10, I think there's some kind of bias going on with this Air Force team. But Colorado State and Bobo over there, Bobo's dad coached over there at Georgia, and he came down last year to help his son out when his son was sick last year in stopping the option. So Colorado State did a good job last year with this team and stayed between the number, and I think they could stay between the number definitely this time as well. This team right here, the offensive side of this Colorado State team is like a team that's on the rise to actually win something, but they just can't stop the floodgates on defense to really turn around and win some games. Now, being that Air Force is an option team, they slow it down on offense for Colorado State. Colorado State can kind of see what's going on in front of them, and maybe they have a chance to make some good stops right there. But Colorado State will score for sure in this game. It's just, matter of time and stuff like that, because they can do it on the ground and they can do it in the air. So give me that 10 points with Colorado State. I'm going back to the well with that one. And I'm with the Big Ragoo on Notre Dame. As much as I don't like Ian Book, and I think he's scared, and we're too far in the season for me to be thinking these type of things about the quarterback. He should have either been gone or rose to the occasion by now. So, but we're at home. Home is where we do. We make magic. We got the leprechauns out there, but we make magic at home. Once again, expect Notre Dame to score within the first 2 possessions, because that's always a part of the game plan. So if you want to go some kind of prop bet and you can get first score, definitely consider taking Notre Dame in that spot. And I think they hold them off, even though I said on the show that I wasn't to fade Notre Dame all the way out. I think it might have just been a little bit of something in me really not liking Ian Book. But I guess I gotta have faith in Kelly in this one, that he's gonna lead the team the right way and get a win in this game as well. So I like those two. I'm hesitant to add a lot of stuff to the card because situationally we got a lot of stuff going on. Some of these teams are senior night, all kinds of stuff like that. So I'm just treading. I'm really in the Mountain West as much as I can be. I'd like to make a play on the Boise game, but the number's kind of high. But the best ones that I see over there, Colorado State. I took San Diego State last night. And I'm trying to narrow it down a little bit this week and relax, really get to watch some football, because I got to keep my eye open for who's going to be having bowl hopes next week.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't argue with that side. Colorado State, that's a lot of points to be laying with that Air Force. I like Air Force in pick'em range. I like Air Force as an underdog. They've been excellent as an underdog, but you get them laying 10.5 like this, it's a little dubious. I think there's points too. I bet the over in that Air Force Colorado State game. I know Colorado State did, as you mentioned, DJ Big Boss, they did shut down the triple option, did a decent job of it last year. They've been bad against the run this year is the problem. But at the same point in time, Colorado State's offense, again, they throw the football a lot. It's a terrible secondary. Air Force. I mean, you can throw the football on that team. So it's offensive advantages, I think, for both teams. So Colorado State and the over actually were two bets I looked at in that game. Again, Notre Dame, what do you make of Notre Dame? Because that was a bounce back statement win last week against Duke. Remember, they had the bad loss to Michigan. They got crushed. Hangover the next week against Virginia Tech. They barely won that game. And yeah, it looks on paper like Notre Dame got their act together last week against Duke, but Duke has played terrible football now for like the last month, and it pains me to say that because David Cutcliffe's one of my favorite coaches in college football, and his team's just been brutal for the last several weeks. So was that Notre Dame getting better or showing up, or was that just a bad Duke team? We'll find out today, I guess, when they take on this Navy team. But, Navy's secondary, I'm going to be kind when I say this about Navy's secondary. It's a ham and egger secondary. It really, really is. Any kind of competent offense and competent quarterback should be able to make plays against that Navy pass defense. We'll see if Ian Book and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish offense can do that today. All right, we're going to get to best bets in a second. We're going to do money line underdogs first. Drew Martin, by the way, we're going to I'm going to mention a money line underdog and his best bet at the end of the show. But his money line underdog is Ole Miss plus 1,100. How about that for a huge upset against this smoking hot LSU Tigers team? Again, the letdown usually happens more than when you're off a loss in that game than when you're off a win, but that's a lot of points for LSU to be laying. I'll say this about Ole Miss. Defensively, they've hung in there. They've battled. I'm not a big fan of what they're doing on offense. It's a very run-heavy offense they're running with John Reese Plumlee at the quarterback spot. And then they're also bringing in the other quarterback. They're using sort of a two-quarterback system right now. Ole Miss, can that work against LSU's defense? But as LSU, after just a monster win against Alabama last week in a tremendous football game, if you saw that game, and most of you did, physically draining, mentally draining, ups and downs, emotional roller coaster, back and forth from start to finish. This is not the spot I'm rushing to lay 21 with LSU in, but does Ole Miss match up with LSU? That's the big question. Drew Martin thinks Ole Miss does, clearly, because he's taken a shot with them, plus 1,100 on the money line. We'll give Drew Martin all the credit in the world if somehow Ole Miss pulls out the win today, and it gives LSU their first loss. But he likes Ole Miss there in that one. Mine, in terms of a money line underdog that I'm interested in, hell, I think you could do worse than Indiana to pull off a shocker. I don't trust Penn State really in that position that they're in today. How about Cal against USC? I haven't mentioned that game. I don't like the USC team right now where they're going. California's defense could really give them and Slovis some fits. Hell, they might even have Chase Garber's back. He's been injured the last few weeks. He might be back at quarterback for Cal. And even if he isn't, Devin Modster's coming off his best game of the season at quarterback. And it's not like USC's defense is great. So Cal on the money line might be something to look at as well. I mentioned Texas. Obviously, you can't go wrong. Tom Herman is a dog, and he's won outright a lot of those games as an underdog as well. So those are a few that I've got in mind for moneyline underdogs. Big Ragoo, any moneyline dogs that have appealed to you?
I'm going to pick up right where you left off. Texas, that team's burned some of my cash this year. They owe me a little bit of money, so that's one of my moneyline underdog plays. I think Iowa State's had some tough losses against Baylor. Like you said, last week they went for the 2 and lost that one. So it's a perfect spot for Texas to get right here. I know their cornerback's out for the first half. I know their secondary has been like blistering bad all season long, but I think they're getting healthier. I like Texas and possibly even Temple at home, getting the 6 points. That might be a money line play also to look at. But Texas is going to be the one. Auburn's the other one I liked. I mentioned earlier in the show, I like Auburn to get the victory at home. So I'll give you 3 spots: Texas, Auburn, and Temple at home. So
yeah, Temple. I was leaning Temple as well. The only concern is Tulane off the bye. And those late November bye weeks are like they're worth their weight in gold because you've played so many games in a row. You've got injuries galore at this time of year. You get a late bye, mid to late November in college football. It's huge. And you often see teams with just incredible, they just look a whole lot better. They're healthier coming out of the late season bye. That's the one concern I had with taking Temple, but I lean in that direction. They're always interesting.
Texas is my money line. Texas. Put me down for Texas. That's my official play.
All right, Texas, and I agree with that. DJ Big Boss, money line dog. You got any for us?
I think my money line and dog all goes with my best bet as well. And I've been liking this game more and more and more and more and more as I think about it, and that's a good thing for me. And it's Wyoming and Utah State. So Utah State, I don't understand the numbers, how they put Utah State in this position. Utah State is 5-4. Wyoming is 6-3. Even though Utah State is 4-1 in the conference. Now, Utah State was a really good team last year, but this year is nothing like what they did last year on the field. Now, maybe the numbers may look very similar, but it's a lot different. Or maybe they're weighing that Sean Chambers, the quarterback for Wyoming, is out, who is a running quarterback, who is responsible for most of their running yards. But the guy that stepped up in his place, Vanderwall, this guy, he did a pretty good job last week taking care of the team. He has a total different skill set than Sean Chambers, which you can't scout for. So I think the pass may be open, which Wyoming hasn't been able to utilize their receivers on that team. I think they have Rocket Ishmael's son on that team, and he's a big guy, a big aggressive receiver. So he got some targets that he could hit if he want to go into the passing game. And I think they could definitely surprise this Utah defense, who is 103rd. They don't do much well, and they lost their top tackler on defense, which I cashed last week with the over, knowing that what's his name, D. Woodward, was out. He had 93 tackles on defense at linebacker. You lose your top tackler right there. The run lanes are open. The run opens up the pass. It could be a disaster for them. Wyoming shows a little more offense than we usually expect each year, even though on paper they average about 27 points a game. Even though they average 27 points a game, they do a pretty well job on offense. They did great against San Diego State's defense. You see what San Diego State did last night. I think Wyoming's a good team going into the end of the season. They did catch a couple bad losses, but they can make that up right here, starting with Utah State. And that's my best bet. I got it early, +6. It's all the way down to 4.5. And it's also my money line dog play. So I'm definitely sprinkling something on the money line as well.
All right, so there we go. That's the money line underdog, and that's great that you mentioned it as a best bet because we're rolling right into best bets right now to wrap up the show. Wyoming +4.5, best available number right now. Wyoming +4.5 against Utah State. That is DJ Big Boss's best bet for this Saturday college football card on the Clothing Line Show. Big Ragoo, what have you got for us for best bet? Actually, I think you mentioned it already, but reiterate what that is.
Boomer Sooner. They get the job done today. Laying the 10.5, whatever it is. I'm going to take them to knock Baylor's asses in the ground today. So we're taking the Boomer Sooner to get the job done.
Oklahoma. All right, Boomer Sooner, -10.5. Hopefully no chuck wagon incidents for the Oklahoma team today. Remember that chuck wagon tipped over that one game, and everybody fell out of it. So although they usually only do that in Norman, so they won't be doing that tonight with the road game in Waco. But Oklahoma -10.5 against Baylor is Big Ragoo's best bet. Mine is I don't think I've had a MAC best bet for a while, but at Central Michigan, Ball State is the one I'm going to go to. I think the wrong team's favored here. I really like what Central Michigan's doing. Jim McElwain's really done a great job with this program. I trust the quarterback and the offense. Quentin Dormity's a pretty solid quarterback for this Central Michigan team. They can run it. They can throw it. Ball State, to me, has not really shown that they're able to step up and beat some of the upper half of the MAC schools in this conference here. You've got Central Michigan right now about 2 point. I like the over as well in this game. Like, these are two pretty solid offenses, especially Central Michigan. They play very fast. Their offense has been lighting up the scoreboard. 60.5 can probably get over the total, but I'm going to use the side as the best bet here, and we're going to take Central Michigan, the Chippewas, +2 against the Ball State Cardinals. That's Central Michigan +2 against Ball State for my best bet on the college football closing line. All right, that's going to wrap up the show, guys. Great stuff. Always love doing these shows with you. You're great guys, great bettors, great handicappers. We had a bunch of fun in Miami. We hope to do more of those events down the road. I certainly hope to attend some more of those events down the road as well. Great stuff with you guys. Thanks to everyone in the chat for tuning in. We will be back next Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern, with our next edition of The Closing Line, and Drew Martin will be back with us as well to patrol the ship in the host share next Saturday. So make sure you join us again next Saturday for the College Football Closing Line. For Big Ragoo and DJ Big Boss, the boss on the sauce, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great Saturday. Good luck with all your wagers. We'll see you again next Saturday right here on The Closing Line.
Good luck, everybody.